One, we are live. Hello and welcome to PropTechBuzz, a podcast channel where we talk to CEOs and founders from all over the world, from PropTech companies, and learn from them insights about their businesses. I'm thrilled to have with me excited guest today. But before that, just a request to all the listeners. I'm sure if you are listening to this, you are from prop tech industry, and I would ask you to subscribe to this channel because the more people subscribe, the more reach there is for these insightful conversations. So that's one request from my end. With that, let's introduce our guest today. Our guest is Sanjay Mandava. He's the founder and CEO of Landeed, a startup that makes land transactions transparent at the click of a button. And LinkedIn revealed to me that he's also an angel in a lot of startups. But I will better leave to Sanjay to speak a little more about his career trajectory. So, with that, let's welcome Sanjay. Sanjay, welcome to PropTech Buzz. How are you doing today?
Doing well. How about you, Ravi?
I'm doing great as well, Sanjay. So,
Yeah.
Sanjay, before we get into the meatier stuff, why don't you quickly give a snapshot of your career trajectory? That will be helpful because LinkedIn did not reveal a lot.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I went to college in Monaco. It's called University of Monaco. So, south of France. For those, maybe I'm sure most of you know, but that's where the Grand Prix is held. That's the easiest way. So some people get it confused with Morocco, which is in North Africa. And secondly, then most of my professional background prior to what I call the startup life, which in itself is a life. It's not a profession any longer. Once you start your own, shop, was mostly in investment management. So I previously worked at a hedge fund, activist hedge fund, and that was something that was really enticing for me. I knew, at a fairly younger age, that I wanted to work in a profession where I'm able to capture an upside in the value that I create for an organization and have a lot of autonomy. And obviously, management consultant was one of those things that came up. I just didn't want to do it. And another is investment banking, but luckily I was able to get into the buy side. So we worked on some activist investment campaigns from companies in retailing down to oil and gas and miners. So that was very instructive. And yeah, a lot of these experiences, and a lot of these companies operated in Africa or Central Asia, and so you got to see a lot about how major of the world and the business works. So that was very insightful, and that's been instrumental for me as I move towards the startup life. And essentially the outcome of all of that was not that I didn't believe in that before, but especially afterwards strengthened my resolve that capitalism is probably the best tool available to humanity to I guess amplify meritocracy, and therefore social uplifting, and social mobility as well. So
And then when did Landed happen?
yeah, so after that, one of the reasons I came back to India was because we had large land parcels around various states in India. And basically my parents had accumulated these both through inheritance, but also because they wanted to come back to India and start a chain of hospitals. And both of them were physicians, and so that was one of their dreams. But essentially, my dad passed away, and my mom, being a single parent, found that she could do very little in India. And it was very difficult for her to be able to maintain land holdings and protect them. And soon enough, we had multiple encroachments. People ranging from politicians, elected officials, some of them still in the government service, some of them even ministers today. So
Which part of India? Just
what's that?
curious. Which part of India?
Southern India, and so predominantly. But yeah, and so that's actually what brought me back to India. So I was born here and I left India when I was 8, but I've been in India now back for almost 8 years now, 8, 9 years. And so my first startup in India was actually in real estate development. Essentially one of the two best ways to protect land in India is either to collateralize with a state-owned bank, or to build something on top of it. right? And so one of the original ideas was to start building mechanized warehouses with the idea that they'll eventually become, what you call today fulfillment centers, or high-tech distribution centers, as e-commerce and online shopping in India started to increase in penetration. This was around 2015, 14 or so. And that brought me to trucking, because I said, why, if I'm going to do warehousing, why not build a full stack 3PL company? Because I thought the whole logistics space in India was very disorganized, and because we experienced it in our own family business. And so I said, let's bring in trucking, packaging, and warehousing in under one shop. And then that's how I discovered trucking. I was like, oh wow, this shit's more broken than even warehousing. And so that was my second startup, which is GoLorry. Went through YC, and same set of founders, Jonathan and ZJ, and now in the third startup as well, which is Landeed, same set of founders. So we've known each other now for almost 7 years, running on 8. It's a privilege to be able to work with them, and it's been a hell of a journey.
Got it. So what is the trucking startup called?
GoLorry,
GoLorry.
GOLOR. Yeah.
And it is still a running business?
Yeah, so it's been partially acquired, and we're also licensing out the technology of GoLorry to other service providers.
And it was YC backed too?
Yep, it was also YC backed.
Okay. What was this? What was the, because there are so many trucking companies. What was
Yeah,
YC,
there is.
YC backed is the gold standard, right? So what was the value proposition
Yeah.
for you, and how were you differentiating yourself than other companies?
At that point in time, are you speaking about GoLorry?
At that time when YC decided to back you, what was your value proposition?
Yeah. So so actually, an earlier trucking startup had gone through YC, based in US, and they'd received some venture backing from top tier funds, and we looked at that, and I didn't really understand how the market was cleared through the mechanisms that they were putting on there. And one of the first insights that we had was, and one of the things that we built even today in India, it's still a first and probably the most accurate, which is automated pricing engine for trucking freights. So think of it like Uber, like methods, right? And so a lot of this stuff in India, so in US and even in Europe, you have DHL, CH Robinsons, FedEx, UPS. A lot of these guys are large freight owners. You have in US a bunch of other ones as well. But in India, you really didn't have a national broker, and a lot of them were regional brokers, and not only regional, a lot of them only controlled one or two lanes. So if you were saying like, look, you had this well-known broker, but that broker was probably only doing Hyderabad to Chennai or Delhi to Mumbai. And another thing was they only knew it based, there was no like strict calculation. It was visual supply and demand. And one of the other things that we've kind of, I would say invented, if I could, so far and go and say that, was when you create new human behaviors, or you make human behaviors more efficient, that it almost looks new, and therefore by extension you create new markets. And I would say one of the new markets that we created, and that was really tough to do in India at that point in time, wouldn't have been possible, is let's say you wanted to send a truck from point A, but you wanted it to do drop offs at point B, C, and D. This is intercity. We're not talking about intracity. Intracity, that's common, the multi drop off. And so if you had a broker that was doing it in his head on a lane, he literally would not take that load because he could not compute in his head how to do that. Right? So the market wasn't even possible. The moment we came in, you started to see more efficient behavior with people being able to sublot and do multiple drop offs. And that created a new market. And funny enough, that was also the first time where we saw, okay, we created a new market. The clients were benefiting, but we were also having the highest margins through that kind of mechanism, right?
Correct.
And so that was kind of some of the stuff that we've done with GoLorry.
Got it. I didn't intend to ask about GoLorry. It's all Landeed
Yeah.
today, but just
Sure.
was very curious.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can, the transition story towards Landeed, that would be helpful to know.
Yeah. So as we were thinking about what to do with Golori, we noticed some infrastructure laggards, I would say, in India, in regards to taking this where we want to go. And we were looking at ways, and online offline business in India, as we're seeing not only in India, in a lot of places around the world, were becoming very, very different than what they were intended to be. We wanted to be the first ones to do autonomous trucking in India. And that was a time when Uber and Lyft all had their autonomous vehicle divisions in house.
Got it.
But then the whole thesis was, look, once grow it out, once you get margins through more efficiency, you'll be able to fund the R&D for AVs. And that really never played out, right? The core matchmaking business never really provided enough margins for you to deploy into R&D for autonomous vehicles.
Right.
And then you saw these vehicles, you saw the being spun away from the holding companies. And then basically what we realized is that's a mission drift. So we said, listen, we built great tech, probably the best in India. There's a bunch of other companies out here that can use this kind of tech. We were even debating doing open sourcing. And while I was in US, we were discussing this strategy. My land in Chennai got encroached upon. Somebody put a illegal meat shop while I was gone, and somebody else informed me. Basically, what I'd done when I came back to India was put in security guards in each of these land plots and put a city head. But during the COVID, the security guard had run off to his village, and my city head hadn't informed us. Our manager in that city hadn't informed us that this guy had left, and this guy was still pretending to pay the watchman the salary, the guard the salary, while he was just keeping the money.
Right.
And our a friend of mine just WhatsApp me and said, hey man, like, did you sell the land or something? I was like, what? No. And he's like, well, somebody bought it without you knowing. And he sent me a photo of some dude setting up a meat shack there and all of this. So I go back to India, and I realized, like, this is kind of a hellacious experience. It's not the first time it's happened, but I've been putting our real estate assets in autopilot while I was running Golori, because I'm very single threaded in that manner. And so I went there and I said, hey, listen, what are you doing? You need to get off this, the property, like, what's going on? He goes, sir, if you give me a little bit of money, I'll exit the land. I'm a local, and I said, like, if that was 8 years ago and I first came to India, I would be like, what the fuck? Get the hell out of here. Right. But instead, what I told him is, look, if you decide to, if you take down the shop and you sit down here, sure, we'll give you, some money and say that's community service or social service or whatever, you move on. But if you start negotiating with me with your illegal construction on my property, then I consider that extortion, and I'll bulldoze you within the next 48 hours. And so I bulldozed him because he was still discussing. And so he went and reported to the police. For the people in India, they would know that police tend to side a lot with the locals. They have local favoritism or flavor.
Got it.
And also, that's how politics also works here, because people want to support their constituency because that's who votes for them, and therefore the political forces also kind of tend to say favor the small businesses.
Right.
So we will go to the police and we're like, hey, like, and he's like, you bulldozed somebody's shop, like, how could you do that? I was like, what shop? I didn't see it. And he's like, no, it was there. I said, if you have any evidence, produce it. Otherwise, I didn't see any shop. It's my property. And then he goes, well, how do we even know that it's your property? And I'm like, so here's the sales deed. We show it to him. He goes, this is not enough. He pulls out an entire requisition list of documents that I needed to produce. I go to my lawyer and I'm like, hey, what is this? He goes, then he explains to me, and I start digging deeper. And all these years, I've just been brute forcing my way through in terms of doing real estate, securing, basically employing a small private army, right? And basically what we find out is, unlike UK and Singapore and even parts of US, India has something called presumptive ownership, whereas UK, Singapore, and Australia is famous for Torrens law, have something called conclusive titling. In conclusive titling system, when the property owner is selling the property, the government actually verifies and says whoever is the seller is actually the owner of the property, and whoever is a purchaser is actually the financier in the transaction.
Right.
And therefore, when the transaction is complete, because there's a government verification, there's a single title deed that's provided and given to the purchaser.
Right.
And in the US, the way that it got around is because of the development of the title insurance industry,
Mm.
where in India, you have something called presumptive ownership. In that system, basically, what they say is, look, the government has no, responsibility in terms of verification and validation of ownership. It's up to the purchaser to verify whether the seller is actually the owner of the property.
Wow.
And because the government is not involved, there is no single given by the government.
Mm.
And so, what the end result is basically where the government uh, says you need a collection of documents to ascertain the validity of your ownership,
Right.
right? And so, my single title deed was not enough. Basically, a sale deed in India, a purchase agreement in India, is nothing but a record of two parties having engaged in a transaction.
Wow.
It's not exclusive. So that's why a single property can have multiple sales deeds.
Mm.
Multiple people have been sold the same property
Got
and
it.
cheated and defrauded. It's a common thing, and I'm sure you know. And the end
No,
result is huge.
I'm aware of it. What confounds me, what boggles my mind is this has happened to me 30 years ago. I remember when I was still a kid, and my dad had to face
Yeah,
this. What boggles my mind is
yeah,
this has been continuing till date,
yeah.
and
Right.
nobody
There's no
has
sense of
solved this. So this
responsibility.
convoluted system is actually
Yeah.
benefiting the middleman, isn't it? And that's why I think nobody has changed
I,
this.
I have a saying that which is when when the land is of low value, it's yours. When it increases and becomes high value, it's the local developers who's politically right.
Okay.
So, without pointing fingers or anything, that's the nature of the game. It's the evolution of any country, right? India's going through its growing pains. You take it for what it is. But that's also the learning that I had when I worked at the activist hedge fund. We would be looking at some Russian companies, like in the oil and gas space, where they would sell the oil at a discounted rate to a shell company controlled by the management. And then that would go on to sell to traders, commodity traders at a higher price.
Right.
And one of the understandings of that is in order to change the system, you have to be part of the system first,
Mm.
especially in these countries, right? You can't be an activist standing outside and throwing stones with glass cans. Nothing changes that way.
Got it. So how did you have the courage to step in, get into this dirty water, and try to solve it? Because it's a big it's a fight against also the system, no? Because a lot of legacy system and stuff like that. And did you know where you were headed? At what point did you decide that you need to solve this?
Uh, I think the first realization was kind of uh, I've been, one of the things I often say is I've been given everything. If it's not me, then who is?
Got it.
If I'm a person of resources and ability, and I'm not able to do this, I can't imagine what most of the people
Yeah, yeah.
in the
people
country are
have
going
lost
through.
people have lost their life savings. I have
Right.
friends in the US. They cannot
Yeah,
do all the, so somebody calls them exactly the same. It's a classic template. Somebody
yeah,
calls them saying that, hey, there is an encroachment, what to do? And then
yeah,
you call them back, and then they start negotiating, because it is a model. It's a
mhm,
modus operandi to get money.
yeah. If you're a landowner in India, it's asymmetric warfare
Exactly.
because a lot of the times these guys don't encroach on your land and set up something with the hope of proving their ownership.
Right.
What they're doing is, because it's presumptive ownership,
Yes.
they have to do is create enough of a doubt about the strength of your ownership to go
Yes.
into litigation. They
Yes.
know that if it goes into litigation, the courts are so backlogged that it'll take 20, 30 years
Right.
to clear, and they can get a stay order, right? And
Yeah.
they just keep hoping to get a little bit of some change. And if they can get away with, buying the whole thing at a discounted rate,
Right.
then that's great,
Wow.
right? That's what they're really hoping for.
Okay,
And
so let's get on. Let's move on to how did you decide to solve it? How long did you take to investigate this entire matter and say what could
yeah,
be a first step into this?
yeah. So I've been looking in this space right when I came to India. But what happened at that time was the technology infrastructure was not built. by the state governments. The public data sets were not available for me to build something on top of.
Right.
So today, a lot of the states have some of these property documents available online, which allows me to retrieve quickly and produce to the users.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't noticed the developments because I was in Golori over the years, right? And I think second thing was basically realizing that there's no one department in India. In order to prove ownership, you have to get documents from multiple departments.
Right.
In India, that's primarily two offices: registration department, revenue department.
Mm.
And because India, land falls under the purview of each respective state, it's not a central government subject.
Right.
Each state has built its own technical infrastructure
Got
for
it.
both its registration department and the revenue department.
Got it.
And so each state is different in
But
what
is
it
it
produces.
but is it in digital format, or it is still on paper?
So some of them are digital, some of them are paper you have to retrieve.
Got it.
And in some states, registration documents are available, but not revenues. In some states, revenue documents are available, not registration.
Got it.
So basically, what we've done is brought all these multiple departments and multiple states into a single platform for the first time. And the way that I went about it, if you guys like, if somebody can see the earliest version of our app, they will notice that it has nothing to do with market size. Like Mumbai is the largest real estate market, or Delhi, or Gurgaon. You'll see that it's actually states where I have land because I was trying to solve my own problem.
Got it. Yeah.
I understood best, right? So we took a very bottom-up approach towards solving these problems, and apparently that resonates with the users.
But how did you? Because this is how did you get access to the data? Like, what was? Did you have challenges there? Did you have to deal with government agencies to say that, hey, I'm building this platform to make all of this historical data of any land transparent? Maybe your early challenges there.
Yeah, with some states you have to. So Meghalaya is an example of a state we went to when they had to deal with the government. But a lot of these data sets are public,
Right.
and but they're very tedious.
Got it.
You can think of each government website as like a big Craigslist. It includes, services all of it from like utilities to bus tickets to all of these things. And a lot of the times servers are down and it's not very user friendly. So we made it very intuitive and fluid for users to come in and be able to extract the required information fairly quickly. And they'd have to go to multiple portals.
Sanjay, your audio is having some issues. I mean, it's been a couple of minutes, but it's getting worse.
Hold on one second. Is it better?
It seems better.
I
Yes.
think there's still. Let me leave and come back. Maybe that's.
I Okay. Yeah. All right. Sanjay has dropped off for a minute. Let's see if he comes back. Okay. Sanjay,
Is it better?
see you now. I hear static noise even now.
Okay, hold on one second. Maybe this is.
Excuse me.
Hello, Ravi.
Hi, Sanjay.
Is this
This,
better?
yeah,
Okay,
this
awesome.
seems better. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's basically what we've done. Single platform, multiple departments in each single state, multiple states within the country, all brought into a single, fluid experience on our app.
Got it. And did you prioritize certain states over? I just wanted to understand the enormity of this effort. All right, because India is huge.
Yeah.
And did you? How did you decide your MVP? Did you decide priority states, or even within states, did you decide districts? It's you're talking about land, and then land is huge in India, right?
Yeah.
So, so how did you break it down into smaller pieces?
So I named it Landeed because that's a homage to my problems. But you can check any property. You can
Hmm.
check buildings titles as well in our app. So essentially, I started with the states where I had land.
Got
So
it.
that's Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. You'll see those are the first three states. Then we prioritized by states that had the best data sets available,
Got it.
and then we went to the states that are large in market. So that's basically how we kind of went about. And the MVP was for Telangana, which we believe even today, even though it has a lot of work to do, is still probably the best public data sets available and provided by any state government in the country.
Got it. And what effort goes into these public data sets to refine them further and provide them with real information? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work in terms of, so the within the same state, each department has built its own way that have
Mm,
nothing to do with each other. They're siloed. So
got it.
it's like dealing with two different systems altogether. It might as well be a different state.
Got
It's
it.
as different as that. So that's one. What we tried to do was with the same input, get documents from both departments
Mm,
pertaining to a single property, which is
got
called a
it.
survey number. Think of it like a social security number or a unique property identifier number.
Right.
So that's how we identify properties. And then some other states, there's language differences.
Got it.
So not all of them are in English.
Got it.
And so then transliteration becomes an issue, how people access it becomes an issue, and things like that. So yeah, and some states have maps, other states don't.
Correct.
So it's not like you can go on a Google map, type in the number, and you'd get property title information. That's
Got it.
something we uniquely created very recently, which is India's first.
So does your results also differ based on the kind of data sets that you are receiving, or your results are standardized across all states?
So our results are what that government has provided
Got it.
for that particular property.
Got it.
We do not want to add more, you know, I would layers on top of that because that would actually take away authenticity. We want to be equivalent to the government agencies.
Got it.
Doing
Yes.
anything special with it would actually make us less authentic in a way because
Got
that's
it.
supposed to be the source of truth.
Got it. So did the sales state problem solve with your solution, or it still remains? Because so you have the public data. Does the public data give you the entire history of a certain piece of land?
Yeah, so it's called an encumbrance certificate. Think of
Hmm.
this document as a very rudimentary blockchain. It
Got it.
includes a flow of all transactions pertaining to that property going back 20, 25 years.
Nice.
But you can go back even further. That's a manual search. We also provide that facility. But if
Got
you
it.
wanted something more in detail and depth, in
Got it.
India, because there's no title insurance, you have something called legal opinion.
Got it.
Legal opinion is basically, like a lawyer looking and vetting the property and saying, okay, it's good and clean and marketable.
Got
But
it.
he has no liability. He's not on the hook if something goes wrong in the future.
Got it.
So what we've done with that is we've automated that process. That would take almost 2 months in India to do. We made it 10 times faster. Now we do automated legal opinion using tech because we're the fastest at document procurement because of our tech. Therefore, we're able to process the legal opinion the fastest.
Got it. So what's the ideal experience on your app? So how does the experience look like?
Yeah, imagine you're an owner looking, or maybe a developer looking to see if this is a good site that's available. Usually what happens is a broker would bring it up to you. I can give you an example of recently a property that was brought forward to my attention. I won't name which one, but it was among one of these, JLL, CBRE, Collier type of, organizations, and
Commercial
they,
property.
yeah, and it was actually a land parcel. They were like, "Hey, would you be interested in purchasing this?" Because they know I'm in the market. Sometimes, we purchase land parcels.
Mhm.
And when I went and checked up in my app, it was actually under a different owner than what these guys had sent me. I said,
Mhm.
"Look, it doesn't even match," because these guys are not interested in doing the due diligence.
Got it.
Their primary motive is to make sure that the parcel gets sold or that property gets sold, and they collect their transaction fee. So essentially, like what I would have done is I would have checked up the documents to make sure the revenue documents, meaning their property taxes, their water bills, electricity bills, um, the owner described on that on those papers match the owner's name at the registration department.
Right.
That's equivalency. Now, I also want to make sure that I see that how this property came to the present owner was in a clean and acceptable legal way.
Got it.
So an example of things that can go wrong is in India, if for instance, you had bought the property from a minor,
Hmm.
so that's not allowed.
Got it.
It comes with very stringent conditions.
Hmm.
The court can literally go back and invalidate it,
Got it.
right? And so what I would do is look at these documents. If something works out or not, okay, this looks great. I need to now, the EC also needs to be submitted to the banks to get financing.
Right.
So they will not, give you financing without you submitting that.
Got it.
And using these documents, you can order a legal opinion from us
Right.
saying this property is clean, vetted, and the title is good to go. You take that, you submit it to the bank. Now you get financing. You complete the purchase. So this is kind of how the process would, user journey would look like for you.
Got it. But what do you add? You add the address of the property, or is there a number? Because I'm not aware. I've never transacted in land
It's called
in
a
India.
survey number.
It's a survey
So
number. Okay.
yeah, it's a survey number, and it could include multiple survey numbers for a single purchase. And so we look at all of that, and we make sure that the property is clean, it matches everything, the ownership, title deeds, all the documents are clean, vetted, and have equivalency.
So
And
so
if
what
there's
do you,
not, yeah.
so I still didn't understand. So is this something that comes to you and then you vet it out, or it is something that is already there and a end user needs to put in the survey number and get the results?
Yeah, so the user does need to put in the survey number.
Got it.
So there's, like the whole country is surveyed. I mean, the whole state has survey numbers, right?
Got it.
Block by block. So in order to check in our app, they need to enter the survey number.
And then do you get the results instantly, or do they have to wait? Instantly.
For 10 states, it's instant.
Got it.
For the majority of the state, for the others, half of the states, it takes around, anywhere from 6 to 8 hours.
And what do you do in that 6 to 8 hours? Is it something that
Yeah, so it could be that you applied for it and the government needs to return back with
got
the
it?
result. So
Got it.
maybe they have a manual process going on, whatever it is. They have, and the other reason is some of these websites are also down frequently. We
Got it.
built in downtime management. So we ask the user, basically, we try to tell the users to basically over deliver and under promise
Got it.
sort of thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, are you guaranteeing 100% coverage, or you like what's the expectation of a customer? Like, do you have 100% coverage of all the land areas that you're promising, or how is it?
Yeah, if we cover a state, we have coverage of it, like the entire state. So there are 3, 4 states in India we don't cover. Jammu
Got
and Kashmir, Kerala.
it.
There's I think one more in Northeast, but for the majority of the country we cover
Got it.
now.
And who are your target customers? What kind of customers use your product?
Yeah, funny enough, it's government officials themselves, um, because they don't want to use the government portal that they've
Nice.
been stuck with. And then you have second set of users, which are property brokers,
Nice.
and then the third set of users are lawyers, because
Hmm.
as I mentioned before, 2/3 of all court cases in India, civil court cases, deal with land or land related disputes.
2/3. Wow.
Yeah, 2/3. So there's, I believe, as of last count, more than 7.5 million pending court cases
Wow.
with
No.
historical values at $200 billion plus of
Wow.
stuff. real
No
estate.
wonder this is a big business, deliberately convoluted. Okay, got it. So these are your customers, and how do they? So what's the how do you monetize it? Like, is it subscription? It is one time, or how does it work out?
Yeah, we're testing different things. We've done free. So recently, we've turned a lot of states free.
Hmm.
We wanted to see if title search, title search, I wanted it to be public and I wanted it to be easy for people.
Got it.
And if people found that useful, I wanted them to purchase other things that we offer versus making title search the thing that we want them to pay for. Because the
Wow.
whole point is to make it democratized and make it available, right? And when you're able to do this, I think one thing India really lacks is trust and authority in the real estate space, particularly in the prop tech real estate technology space.
Got it.
So we thought by providing this, that's something that people can come to us and trust to get honest, and clean results.
Got it.
And if they get that, then we become the central hub for their documentation needs. So we used to charge people money, and we still do,
Right.
but there we are having discussions about making the core property title search free, and then charging for the legal opinions and other things.
That will be transformational if you can come up with a model that completely gives transparency, like Wikipedia. Okay,
Yeah.
and then you figure out other ways to add services on top or something of that sort. But that will be really transformational, and then you become that one player. I'm just curious, are there other players who are also solving this?
Uh, Not in the way that we're doing it, as far as I'm concerned. As and I know this space pretty well, I think now. But yeah, we're the largest and the only property title search engine that does multiple states instantly for people,
Got it.
accessible. Yeah.
And this is a challenge unique to India, I suppose, or your you could replicate, or you could bring products for other countries as well, like this.
Yeah, a lot of emerging markets are our target. So any country that has basically any country that doesn't have conclusive titling
Got it.
is a target. And what that means is basically a lot of emerging markets, right?
Got it.
Essentially, what we try to tell people is our vision is to essentially make real estate as transactable as stocks on the stock market,
Got it.
and our mission is to increase the GDP of the physical world, as Stripe says for internet, right? And I think really what we're doing is fundamental to that. Like I say, particularly in India, for instance, 84% of household wealth is concentrated in land, real estate, and property, versus
Hmm.
41% in US.
Got it.
11% is gold. That comes after real estate, but everybody just focuses on the gold and
Hmm.
not really property, because there's a lot of roadblocks for somebody to get into property in India. Even
Got it.
land holdings are very much concentrated among the few. So social mobility becomes an issue, and also a lot of wealth gets trapped, right? This is an example that we kind of use where we say, look, imagine a woman that's been running a kirana shop, or what you call a small grocery store or retailer in India. She's been on there for 30 years, but she doesn't even have a clear title to that land because she hasn't been caring about it. Now she can't take it to the bank to either upskill herself or take a loan to provide education for her son or daughter.
Got it. It's
Um,
even more hurtful for the poor, poorest of the poor. Okay, if
right.
they have inherited a small piece of land, and then it just is stuck in a case or something of that sort. So,
Yeah.
um, cool. Thanks, Sanjay, for sharing your story and the transformational effort that you're putting in Landed. I'm finally glad that somebody's trying to solve this, and kudos to you for doing this. And I'll keep a close eye on how you evolve. Maybe could you share the future vision? I mean, I'm sure you're now bringing transparency to you. I'm sure there's a roadmap on what else you could do that.
Yeah, yeah. Certainly to do it in other countries as well.
Mm,
First, um, I, I, I find that India is a great training ground. If we can solve this here, we can do it anywhere.
got it.
That's one. Number two is to bring title insurance or title insurance like products
Mm,
directly into the market through us. And three, to essentially, right now, in order for you to close a property transaction in India, it takes around 2 months.
mm,
And like, you don't. people really don't wonder how somebody's able to theoretically purchase a property in New York City or San Francisco today morning and sell it tomorrow evening.
Right.
And the reason for that is title insurance, right? We want the same thing to happen in all the countries that we work in. This will increase the social mobility and empowerment significantly. This will also deepen the secondary markets for real estate and wealth creation and liquidity as well. You can't even do asset-backed securities or mortgage-backed securities, which will essentially lower mortgage prices, rates for the common people, and therefore increase housing penetration, house ownership penetration, without having title insurance or conclusive titling, right? So this is something that we really care about.
Excellent. All the best, Sanjay, and thanks for your time to give us on a late evening India time.
Thanks, Ravi. It was a
See you
pleasure.
around. Bye bye.
Appreciate it.